everybody and welcome back to the Blossom Crochet channel. If this is your first time visiting my channel, then do make sure that you subscribe now and also click that little bell icon so that you can receive notifications whenever I upload a new tutorial. So in this tutorial I'm going to be showing you how to create the beautiful corner to corner stitch. However, I'm going to be showing you the 5-2 method. So the other tutorials on my channel are using the 6-3 method, whereas I've sort of moved on from that particular one now, and I do all of my corner to corners now using the 5-2 method, which is what I will show you. And the difference that using the 5-2 method makes is that it is a much tighter stitch. So as you can see here, even when I pull on it a little bit, the gaps aren't particularly big. So it just gives a much closer, more dense stitch. So I will also show you how to change colour as well, but let's just crack on. So obviously when it comes to your yarn and things, just use any yarn that you like and whatever hook size that particular yarn recommends. So I'm using Scheepjes Stonewash for example, and I'm going to be using the recommended 5mm hook. So you'll start with your slip knot on your hook and you're going to chain 5. So yarn over, pull through, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. We're then going to work back along, and we're using UK treble crochets for the entirety of the project. So obviously if you're used to using US terms, then these will be your double crochet. So if you hear treble, just remember in the US these are your double. So we're going to work into the 3rd chain from the hook. So you're going to count back 1, 2, and this is the 3rd, and you're going to treble. So yarn over, insert into that 3rd chain, yarn over and pull up. Oh, I've got a little visitor. And then yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. So that's your first treble, and then you want another treble into each of the last 2 chains. So again, yarn over, insert into the next chain, yarn over and pull up. You'll have your 3 loops again, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, and then one final treble into your very last chain, and you have just got your first block. So at this point you want to turn your work, so turn your work around and you'll have your working end at the front here, and we're going to chain 5 again because we're at the start of a row. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the start of your row you will always have a chain 5 until you're on your decreases obviously. And then you're going to do the exact same thing. So you're going to skip the first 2 chains and you're going to put 1 treble into the next 3 chains. So skip 2 and treble into the 3rd. Make sure that you don't let this twist back round because it will confuse you. Make sure that you keep it that way. And then again, 1 treble into the next chain. And then 1 final treble into that very last chain. So your last chain just here. Oops, it didn't go well, did it? So 1 final treble into that stitch. And then you want to join this new block that you've done to the last block that you did. And to do that, so again, make sure that it is facing the right way. So the chains should be on this side and your slip knot should be directly below the stitch you've just done. And you want to insert your hook into that chain space. So you've got your 3 trebles and then you've got your chains. So you want to insert your hook into those chains, into the space, and slip stitch. So yarn over and pull through both loops. Okay, so now we want to work some stitches into this chain space where we've just slip stitched, but we want to start the new block. And to start our new block you'll want to chain 2, and then into this chain space you're going to do your 3 trebles. So into that chain space. So 1, 2, 2 and 3, all in that same chain space. So that is your next row done. So obviously you're going to increase each time. So we've now got 2 blocks, and on our next row we will have 3 blocks. So again, now you want to turn your work around and you're going to chain 5. 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. And then again you're going to do your 3 treble crochets, so you'll skip 2 and then 1 treble into the next 3 chains. So 1, 2, and again into that final third one you'll put your third and final treble. And then again you want to attach this block to this one. So you'll find your chains, so you've got your 3 trebles and then your chain space. So you'll slip stitch into the chain space, so yarn over and pull through both. And then again now you want to work your next block into this chain space. So you'll chain 2 to start your next block, and then you'll do your 3 trebles into that chain space. So 1, 2 and 3, and then again you want to attach to the next block. So you want to find your chain space, so you've got your 3 trebles of your block and then your chain space, and slip stitch into that chain space and start your final block. So chain 2 and then 3 trebles into that chain space. Now corner to corner does seem to be a pattern that in particular lots of people tend to struggle with, and the usual answer for that is because their work is twisting as they're doing it. So when they get to the end of the row their work isn't facing the right way, and so you don't know where to slip stitch into. So as long as you keep your work facing the correct way, you should be hopefully okay. So I'll show you one more row now before I show you how to decrease. So again, you're going to turn your work around, you'll chain 5, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So this row you should have 4 blocks because we've got 1, 2, 3, and this row will have 4. So again, you're going to do your 3 trebles, so you'll skip 2 chains and then 1 treble into the next 3 chains. 1, 2 and 3. Again, make sure your work's facing the correct way, and then you want to slip stitch down into the chain space of this first block. So insert your hook and slip stitch, and that will naturally pull your work to face that way, which I find much easier for when I work my trebles now. So to start your new block, you'll chain 2 and then complete your 3 trebles into your chain space. So 1, 2 and 3, and then again you're ready to slip stitch to your next block. So into your chain space you'll slip stitch, start your new block by chaining 2 and then 3 trebles into your chain space again. 1, 2 and 3, and then slip stitch to the chain space at the end of your very final block. So slip stitch and then make sure you complete your last block because you're always increasing at this point. So chain 2 and then 3 trebles into that chain space. 1, 2 and 3. So those are your increased rows. So you would repeat that until you get to the width that you want your project to be. So as soon as your project is wide enough, let me just bring back this blanket to show you. So you'll increase until your blanket is the width that you want it to be. So whatever measurement across the bottom you need your blanket to be. And at this point you can either start to decrease straight away, which will pull you back into a perfect square, or if you want to create a rectangular blanket like this, then you will want to increase on one side only. So this next part of the video will be to create a rectangle, and then the next part after that will be to completely close off to the other end. So if you're wanting to do just a square, then jump ahead to the final decrease section, whereas if you want to make the rectangle, then just stick with me straight away. Okay, so we're wanting to do a rectangle, in which case you will turn your work, and we're going to increase on this end as normal. So you will chain 5, 4 and 5, and you will complete the first blocks as normal. So you'll do your 3 trebles, so 1 into each chain, working back. And then we're going to slip stitch as normal into the block from the row below, and you'll chain 2 and do your new block, so your 3 trebles into that chain space, and you'll work along your row as normal until you get towards the last block. So stop before you complete your last block and meet me in just a second. Okay, so I've just completed my block, so I've got 4 blocks again, which is the same as the row that we did before, and we are level with, if I just put my hook straight, we are level with the end of the row before. So you'll slip stitch into your chain space as normal, but whereas we would normally chain 2 and complete a final block here, we won't be doing that because we are straightening off on one side. So this edge now will follow the line of the hook and it will go straight, and so will this bottom edge. So we will increase along this side each time, but we won't on this side. So we've slip stitched. You're then going to turn your work straight away, and you want to slip stitch to your chain space. So if I just move that working end, you've got 3 trebles there that you've just completed. So you want to slip stitch, slip stitch, slip stitch. Okay, so into the top of that first treble, you're going to slip stitch. Okay, and then the top of the next treble, you'll slip stitch. And the top of that third and final treble, you will slip stitch. And then you're going to slip stitch into your chain 2 space. So into that chain space, you'll slip stitch, and then you're going to start a new block. So it's not the same as when you start a row with an increase in your chain 5. We're just starting a block, so you'll chain 2 only. So just chain 2, and then into your chain space here, you'll work your 3 trebles. Okay, so you can see now we're getting a straight edge working up that way, and you will work along your row as normal, and you will chain 2 and do your blocks all the way across. Okay, so I'm at the point now where I am level, but because this is the side that we are increasing on, you do want to work a final block. So you will chain 2 and work a final increase on at the very end. So again there now you can see we have increased on this side but stayed the same on this side. Okay, so I will show you that one more time. So as you work back and forth, the start of your row will be different because each time you're on an increased side, you will turn and chain 5 because we're increasing on this side. So you'll do your chain 5 and work back as normal. But when you are at the end of this row and you turn your work again, you will not be working your increase. So we'll just work down this row as normal. Okay, so when you're making a rectangle, your block count will stay the same for as long as you're increasing on one side and not on the other. So for the last 3 rows now we've had 4 blocks. So again, I'm at the other side where we are not increasing because we want this to stay straight. So we're going to slip stitch into that chain space, but we're not going to create another block. I am, however, going to change colour at this point just to show you how you would do that. So I'm going to chain 1 and snip off and just pull that tail out and tighten up. Now it would be slightly different depending which side you changed colour on, because I'm changing colour on my straight side where we're not increasing. So if you were changing colour on a side where you were doing your increase, you would literally turn your work, attach your new yarn and chain 5 and work straight up like that. However, I'm attaching on the non-increase side. So I'm just going to start with a slip knot on my hook. So now at this point I will turn my work as normal, and we don't need to slip stitch across this time because we are attaching new yarn, so we will just attach it straight into the chain 2 space. However, obviously if you weren't changing colour, you would turn and slip stitch into your 3 trebles until you get to your chain 2 space. However, this was just my colour changing part. So into my chain 2 space I will just attach my yarn and I'll chain 2, and then I'm ready to start my new block. So like I say, if you haven't changed colour, you will literally just slip stitch to your chain 2 space. So you would then obviously just complete your row as normal. So I'm completing my 4th and final block of this row, and then we will start to decrease completely. So we will be decreasing both sides. So again, slip stitch to that final chain space. If you wanted to carry on with your rectangle, you will turn chain 5 because we're on the increase side, but that is what we will be doing. So you want to complete your final block on this side. So this is our increase side, remember? So that's why we're doing the final block here. Okay, so that is your 4 blocks done again, and I'm going to turn. And so if you were doing your square and you've just finished your increases, then this is what you will do to finish off to make it perfectly square. Or if you've followed along completely and you've gotten to the point where your rectangle is as long as you need it to be, so it's as long down this edge as you need, because obviously as we work these stitches now it will just create that final corner. So the width was determined at the very beginning before we started doing the rectangle, and then the length is determined up this edge. So once you've got to the length you need it to be, you will now start to work back to finish the corner. Or like I say, if you were doing the square, this is the point you'll meet me as soon as you've finished your increases. So instead of increasing now on this side, we will slip stitch to our chain 2 space. So you'll slip stitch into the top of the 3 trebles. So that's 1, 2 and 3. And then you will slip stitch into your chain space. Okay, you'll then chain 2 and complete your block as normal into that chain space. And slip stitch to your next block, and you'll just work along until you get towards the end of your row. So stop before you get to your very last block. Obviously I only have a few blocks here, so it won't take me anywhere near as long. So once you've gotten to the point where you're working this final block here, where you've only got 1 block left on this side, you will work your block as normal. and then instead of increasing or anything, you will slip stitch into that chain 2 space as usual. However, you're not going to chain 2 to complete a final block here. You're literally just going to turn your work around. So you should have decreased by 1 block on that side. So we've gone here from having 4 blocks to now having 3 blocks. Okay, so again now you will turn and you've got your 3 trebles here, so you will slip stitch into the top of each treble. So 1, 2 and 3, because we're decreasing on both sides now. And then again slip stitch into your chain space, chain 2, and work your blocks along as normal until you get towards the end. So again, once you're at the point where you've only got 1 block left on this side, you will work your final block and slip stitch to your chain space as normal. However, we're not increasing. So this time I only had 2 blocks, so you will decrease by 1 block each time. So if you repeat your decrease rows until you get to where you only have 1 block left. And once you've gotten to that point, you will decrease as normal with your slip stitches. 1, 2 and 3 into your trebles, and then 1 into your chain 2 space. And then you will just chain 2 and complete your final block. 1, 2 and 3, and then you will slip stitch to your chain space on your very last block, chain 1 to close, snip off, pull that through and tighten up. So excuse the ends on this, but that is how you should look. So that is how you will create both a square and a rectangle. You'll just use different parts of the tutorial as needed. But you can see it gives a much more dense and much more closed texture, and you also get a little bit more texture with the stitch itself as well, as you can see. So I really do hope that you have enjoyed the tutorial, that you have found it useful. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. But I will see you again for another tutorial really soon. Bye for now.